Yep.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's February 17th SBCAG board meeting. For the record, my name is Das Williams. I'm the chair of the SBCAG board. Madam Clerk, please facilitate the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Williams. Director Hartman?
Here.
Nelson? Lavanino?
Here.
Patino?
Here.
Urig? Julian?
Here.
Sierra?
Here.
Osborne?
Here.
Parodi?
Here.
Clark?
Here.
Rouse?
Here.
And Chair Williams.
Here. After the Pledge of Allegiance, we will ask the clerk to remind folks of protocol, but let's do the Pledge of Allegiance first. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Chair Williams. Now we're going to do a couple of Zoom reminders. For all the panelists, please remember to mute your mic when you're not speaking. If you'd like to comment, please use the raise your hand button. If you're an attendee, you will be in listen-only mode. All attendees will remain in listen-only mode unless unmuted by SBCAG staff to provide public comment. Comments from the public are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The public will not be able to share their video or screen. When public comment is called on for an agenda item, attendees may use the raise your hand button to express desire to provide public comment for that item, and you will be unmuted when it is your turn. Those calling on the phone can dial *9 to raise your hand, and those conclude my Zoom updates.
Item 3 is public comment. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda today?
Chair Williams, I've received no previous request to speak for public comment, and no one in attendance for public comment, and none of the attendees are requesting to speak.
Thank you. Then item 4 is approval of the consent calendar. Do members have anything to pull from the consent calendar? We do need to pull 4F to be read into the record. No? Then please read 4F.
4F, Executive Director's Employment Agreement. Approve and authorize the chair to execute the agreement of employment for Margie C. Curran to serve as Executive Director of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments with a term of March 16th, 2022 through March 16th, 2026, with a base salary of $224,224, plus benefits and allowances.
Is there any public comment or any comment from, first, is there any public comment on any of the items in the consent calendar?
Chair Williams, I've received no request for public comment prior or during or any attendees requesting to speak.
Is there any questions or comments from the board or a request to vote separately?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, thank you.
can I make an announcement?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair and Directors, the Brown Act requires that prior to taking final action in an open meeting that the legislative body verbally report a summary on the recommended salary or benefits package of the local agency executive. I'd just like the record to reflect the reading of item 4F constitutes the required report under the Government Code section 54953 subdivision C3. Thank you.
Is there any board discussion? Is there a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second.
That's a motion by Hartman, a second by Infante. Yerk, sorry. My apologies.
Roll call. Directors Hartman,
Yes.
Nelson, Levanino,
Aye.
Eurig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Sierra,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Perotti,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Item 5, Transportation, Infrastructure, Finance, and Innovation Act.
Item 5, exactly that. Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act update. It's a long one. 5A, receive an update on SBCAG's pursuit of a federal TIFIA loan under the Measure A program. 5B, adopt a resolution 2203 approving and authorizing the chair and the executive director to execute a California Department of Tax and Fee Administration agreement to continue administration of the local transactions and use tax. 5C, adopt resolution 2205 authorizing the executive director and Hindlinter, Dayamas and Associates to examine sales, use, and transaction records for the Measure A program. 5D, approve and authorize the chair to execute an agreement, attachment C, with Hinterlander. And 5E, approve and authorize the executive director to extend the period of performance to the agreement with Hinterlander up to 4 times.
We have a presentation by Sarkis Kacek and Martha Gibbs.
Thank you, Chair Williams. Good morning, directors, and my sincere apologies to Terry for the really long recommendation. But so we have good news today. We are reaching more milestones with closing on our federal TIFIA loan, and that loan is allowing us to help us with our match for our Senate Bill 1, Cycle 1 funding for the Highway 101 HOV project, and to help us with providing Measure A funds to our local partners and regional partners. We recently reached a milestone with the Build America Bureau. They are within the U.S. Department of Transportation, and so they will be helping us close on that loan in the next couple of months. So today, we do have the recommended actions to help reach additional milestones and then to provide your board with an update. So today, I'm joined by Melissa Schick with K&N Financial Advisors. She is on the line, and then we have a brief presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions from the board. Thank you. So we'll hand it over to Melissa.
Good morning, everyone, and members of the board. Pleasure to be here. Just a brief update on our progress with the pursuit of a TIFIA loan with the U.S. Department of Transportation. Sarkis, we can start on the next slide. We've been in front of your board several times, just providing updates on the TIFIA loan process. And this slide is just to emphasize kind of where we're at with regard to the structuring of the loan. And many of the key features have not changed since we were last in front of the board. So the expectation is to pursue a loan not to exceed 70 million. And then remember, the loan is the type of facility whereby it's kind of an overall authorized amount of 70 million, but SBCAG would only draw on the loan as would be needed pursuant to the Highway 101 project expenditures, and then any shortfall in Measure A revenue. So it's a nice structure in that it doesn't commit you on the onset to the borrowing of 70 million, and ultimately your borrowing will be based on your project funding needs through both the loan and actual Measure A revenues. We anticipate that over the Highway 101 construction period, the SBCAG would draw on the loan probably through about fiscal 25. And then once the construction period has commenced, it would begin making loan payments to the US DOT of principal and interest through the term of the Measure A program in fiscal 2040. And then finally, the loan can be repaid without penalty at all or a portion thereof, with any excess Measure A revenues, as well as potentially other state grant funding or other sources of funds. So again, just another unique feature of the loan to control annual debt payment costs. Next slide. This is a mapping of the TIFIA loan borrowing rates, and SBCAG started pursuing a TIFIA loan, just having some initial conversations with the US DOT back in early 2020, when TIFIA loan borrowing rates were approximately, 2.14%. And then over the course of the dialogue and the partnership with the US DOT, rates did decline for some time, but over the course of time, rates have kind of come back to levels where TIFIA loan rates were when you began initially moving forward with the loan process. So in early February, kind of the TIFIA loan borrowing rate was 2.17%. Rates are, as everyone is well aware, both tax-exempt borrowing rates and taxable borrowing rates are on an upward trajectory, and our objective is just really to move forward quickly in the TIFIA loan process to continue to lock in a pretty favorable borrowing rate ahead of further escalation in rates. Next slide. This is just a mapping of the expectation for the annual repayment structure to the US DOT, assuming SBCAG fully drew on the 70 million of TIFIA loan authorization. So approximately annual debt payments of 5.6 million would come off the top in terms of Measure A revenues before the distribution of Measure A revenues to programs and jurisdictions. Next slide. Contained in the packet this morning and for your approval is a proposed amended and restated agreement with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Remember, SBCAG currently has an agreement with the CDTFA to collect the Measure A tax and then remit the tax to SBCAG. The proposed revised or amended and restated agreement before you today allows for a trustee intercept, and that would be marked by the blue, the light blue or gray box with regard to this flow of funds on the slide, such that a trustee first receives Measure A revenues from CDTFA, would make loan payments to the US DOT as would be required prior to Measure A revenues flowing to SBCAG for its traditional distribution to fund projects. So it's just a slight modification to the agreement. And I would say that this structure is quite typical of California transportation sales tax agencies that borrow funds under their sales tax measure. And this type of amendment would be required if SBCAG were to issue public tax exempt bonds in the municipal market, just as it's required with the US DOT. Next slide. So Sarkis mentioned some important milestones that have been completed over the course of late last year, and then we're picking up in earnest this year and really working through some final due diligence from the US DOT on the borrowing, and then beginning the negotiation of a loan agreement with the US DOT. And then once some of those formalities are complete, SBCAG will be invited to submit a TIFIA loan application. And we would then bring the borrowing back to this board for your formal approval. Once the application has been approved, as well as the board approval, SBCAG would be positioned to lock in their TIFIA loan rate and close on the TIFIA loan. And our expectation is to do all of that before the end of this fiscal year. And so with that, Sarkis, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Melissa. So we're really close, and I'm really excited about that. And so we look to close, as Melissa said, by this June. And then after that, we'll be working with the Build America Bureau and then Caltrans, since the connection with the Highway 101 project, and working with Caltrans on that. And then I just did want to take the opportunity to thank our team, Martha Gibbs, Fred Luna, Jackie Mata, and KNN for all the work that we've been putting into this for, it's going to be 3.5 years, but we're happy that we've had this opportunity. And then finally, we did provide TTAC with an update earlier this month, so they're aware of where we are in the steps and then what the impacts would be to the overall Measure A program. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the board?
I had one.
Director, you're.
Who's the trustee? Has that been decided yet? On the who's going to be making the payment? On slide 6, you had in the light blue.
Awesome.
Yeah, Sarkis, do you want me to jump in here, or
Yes,
Martha?
go ahead.
Sure. So the trustee was selected, and it's US Bank. And US Bank has prior history with SBCAG with its prior measure. when SBCAG pursued a bond issuance under the measure prior to Measure A. Additionally, U.S. Bank works with a number of agencies within the Central Coast and also has served as trustee on a number of TIFIA loan borrowings and is familiar with the mechanics as required by the U.S. DOT. So between kind of those various pieces of qualifications, U.S. Bank was selected for that role.
Thank you.
Director Hartman?
Thank you. I remember being on the 2020 trip back to Department of Transportation where we were first learned about this. And Sarkis, you've kind of nurtured it all to this point. So you and your team deserve a lot of credit for this. I just had one question. So the 70 million not to exceed, the interest is locked in, but we only pay on the money that we draw down. Just clarifying that. And could you remind us, I mean, at this point, I think this is the only option we have to move quickly. Is that correct?
Yes, all along we've been considering the public bond financing as well, but the advantages with the TIFIA loan are what led us to this path.
Thank you.
Any requests to speak? And any questions from Santa Maria or other sites?
Chair Williams, I see no other hands raised for questions. We've received no prior requests for public comment and no current requests for public comment.
Then discussion? Is there a motion?
So move, Patino.
Well, we have a first by Director Patino and a second by Director Yurig. Okay. And that is for recommended actions A, B, C, D, and E, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Roll call. Directors Hart, absent. Hartman.
Aye.
Nelson, absent. Levanino.
Aye.
Yurig.
Aye.
Julian.
Aye. Sorry.
That's okay. Sierra.
Aye.
Osborne. Aye. Patino.
Aye.
Torodi.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Rouse.
Aye.
And Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. Item 6, please read that into the record.
Thank you, Chair Williams. Item 6 is the federal legislative platform. 6A, receive a report from SBCAG's federal lobbyist, Don Gilchrist of Thomas Walters and Associates. 6B, approve SBCAG's federal legislative platform for 2022. And 6C, authorize the SBCAG chair, vice chair, and immediate past chair to participate in legislative advocacy activities, including remote opportunities and/or travel to Washington, D.C.
Lauren, please do the presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Williams and fellow board members. It's my pleasure to facilitate this annual presentation of our SBCAG's legislative platforms to your board. Just for a little background, SBCAG's federal and state legislative program is one piece of the puzzle in our work to maximize funding opportunities for high priority transportation projects in our region. This is particularly important as we seek to aggressively pursue matching funds for our Measure A project commitments. It is also to protect our interests as an agency and the communities that we serve. To develop our federal legislative platform, we work with our agency's federal lobbyist, Don Gilchrist, who's here with us today, of Thomas Walters and Associates, in order to effectively convey the board's position on federal priorities to our legislative representatives and federal agencies in Washington, D.C. Attached to your staff report, and we also have copies of them today, is the proposed 2022 draft of the federal legislative platform in two formats. So we provide one format in a red line version so you can see what's changed from the year prior, and a clean copy that's easier to read without the track changes. But in summary, The platform identified 9 issue areas as high priority topics, each containing a goal or strategy. Those issue areas include federal funding for SBCAG's priority projects, innovative financing options like the TIFIA loan presentation you just heard, regional partnerships, augmenting transportation funding sources, full implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure legislation to protect federal funding sources, passenger rail, mobility and climate resiliency, tax benefit for commuters, and pandemic relief. The draft 2022 platform aims to be responsive to the new bipartisan infrastructure law signed by the president in November. And as a priority issue for SBCAG in 2022, we added collaboration with regional partners on the topic of broadband. The platform was reviewed by SBCAG's Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, also known as TTAC, and we did not receive any comments or changes or additions to the platform. So with that, before we take any questions, or we'll show the platform at the end of this presentation, I'd like to welcome Don Gilchrist to present a report on our activities in 2021, as well as what are we going to expect in 2022.
To bring this about.
My apologies, the podium light was not on, so.
I can
Well,
start
well,
all
let's
over.
not start all over, but at very least, let's make sure the public that's watching on TV. This gentleman, Don Gilchrist, is our lobbyist, and he is here in person and already has some good deliverables in terms of federal aid. So take it away.
So I was just getting to the good part anyway. So with the infrastructure legislation, I just really want to thank Representative Carbajal, as well as our senators for their assistance. They supported us so well throughout that process. In 2021, they did not finish the appropriations process, so that's carrying over into this year as a work item. We want to see those appropriations bills signed into law so that we can avoid a long-term continuing resolution. It's also going to be important for the implementation of the infrastructure law. And finally, the Build Back Better reconciliation plan was a significant initiative that passed the House last year. However, it stalled out in the Senate, so that is also carrying over into this year. Next slide, please. So I do want to focus a little bit on the infrastructure bill since that was such a big accomplishment for SBCAG. This is $550 billion of money above the baseline level, so this is new additional money, and it's got a special focus on transportation, although a lot of different infrastructure was included. It includes a multi-year reauthorization of surface transportation programs, and that's important for us because that sets the policy for the programs. It also provides us a measure of reliability over the 5-year life of the bill for this funding, so that's exciting. We saw improvements in all the transportation formulas, which provide the bulk of transportation funding from the federal government, and there's an increase for the competitive grant programs as well. And there's some new competitive grant programs out there that might be of help to SBCAG that we're looking into. In the infrastructure bill, the RAISE program was increased by about 50%, and the InfraGrant program was increased by 60%. I mention those because they're both programs that you have competed for funding in the past, and we'll look forward to continuing to seek funding through them this year and in the next couple of years. But there was a new program, the National Infrastructure Projects Program is funded at $1 billion a year for 5 years. And so that's just an additional opportunity for us. Congress also expanded the scope of transportation programs by enacting some new ideas, the Carbon Reduction Formula Program, the EV Charging Infrastructure Program, as well as a new program that can be used to fund resiliency improvements. So that broadens their focus on the types of things they're trying to do. In the infrastructure bill, they transferred $118 billion from the general fund to the Highway Trust Fund. And what that accomplished was, for the 5 years of this legislation, the trust fund will remain solvent. However, it does not address the underlying issue, which is the revenue shortfalls. So this issue will come back with a vengeance when it's time to do our next reauthorization bill in 5 years. Next slide, please. For 2022, our focus, of course, is now changing a little bit, where we'll be working on implementing the infrastructure bill and, of course, trying to obtain as much funding for SBCAG as we possibly can. I've been participating in staff briefings and webinars with the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs and Department of Transportation. We're keeping a very close eye on all of the funding opportunities that will be released. The RAISE grant opportunity was released in January. Those applications are due in April, so that's one we'll want to keep on. I do expect to see several more come out in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be working with your staff on those. I want to say that our local delegation has been very supportive of SBCAG project applications in the past, and we're going to be working closely with them to make sure that we put our best foot forward as these new programs come online. As far as 2022 goes, we are going to still be working on appropriations from last year simultaneously with trying to start the process for next year. And as part of that, we're going to be looking for any opportunities that we have to actually increase funding for these programs above and beyond that which was included in the infrastructure law. The Build Back Better plan is out there. We do not have any indication of when the Senate may take that up, but we're keeping a close eye on that. And as we just heard from your staff, the TIFIA process will hopefully be coming to a conclusion this year successfully, and we'll be working with your staff on that. Next slide, please. So I do look forward to continuing to work with you and your staff to implement the platform that you'll adopt today. I'd be happy to provide additional information or answer questions if I can. Thank you.
Questions from the board? Director Urick.
No question, just comment. Thank you for all that you do with SBCAG and giving us the opportunities that we have for our county.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Chair Williams, I see no request to speak from the people on Zoom.
And any requests to speak from the public?
Chair Williams, no request for public comment or for anyone attending currently.
Director Hartman.
I just wanted to say how nice it is to see you in person here after
I feel
several
the same
years.
way. Thank you.
And Chair Williams, I just also want to mention that as included in your recommendation today is to appoint the chair, the vice chair, and the immediate past chair to participate in legislative activities this year. We are still assessing those opportunities for us in 2022, whether that will be in person or virtual this year, and coordinating with Dawn on what is the optimum time if it is in person. We're assessing if the offices in Washington, D.C. are actually doing in-person meetings or not. So more to come on there, but we would like an action on that item.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I just, for disclosure to the board, we did have an opportunity to go to the meeting of all the MPOs that gathered in D.C., but it was very early in February, and really it was still kind of in the tail end of the Omicron boom, and we couldn't really completely dovetail it with other activities. And I'll just say, for my part, small children also were a factor. So I will definitely make the time to make one lobbying trip this year if we can identify some times. And of course, I'd love the past chair and the vice chair to come if they can make it. And Don, I mean, one of the things I would love to, because I'm sure it will become available in time, is to better understand the infrastructure, how the Infrastructure Act will affect our spending, and what, whether it will all be how much are competitive grants, how much are direct, how much all that sort of stuff. I don't completely have my head around it yet, so I just would put that out as a to-do. I don't necessarily even need something that's prepared specifically for us, because I'm sure there will be some documents that either the committees or the DOT prepares.
I'd be happy to work on that and also provide what we already have available, and just try to improve on that in the future.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Then please, is there a motion on A, B, and C?
I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommendation A, B, and C.
Motion by Uhrig, second by Osborne.
Roll call vote. Director Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson, Lavanino, Uhrig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Sierra,
Aye, and let's go to DC this year.
Yeah.
Osborne. Aye. Patino,
Aye.
Arodi,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Williams.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Lavanino is also an aye. I hit a bad zone there. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, motion passes 11-0.
It's okay, Director Lavanino. We all have that mute button issue.
Okay, I'll move on to item 7.
Item 7, please read.
Item 7 is the state legislative platform. 7A, receive a report from SBCAG state lobbyist Gus Corey of Corey Consulting. 7B, approve SBCAG state legislative platform for 2022. And 7C, appoint an SBCAG board delegate to participate in Central Coast Coalition Sacramento advocacy activities.
All right. Oh, I'll wait for the Chair Williams. All right, Honorable Chair Williams and fellow board members, we're back. This time it's my pleasure to facilitate the state legislative platform for 2022. So for our state advocacy work, we work with our state lobbyist, Gus Corey of Corey Consulting, who's joined us virtually via Zoom today, and to develop our state legislative platform and to convey the board's positions on state priorities in Sacramento and with state agencies. The legislative platform also helps to inform our advocacy work with Gus Corey for the Central Coast Coalition annual Sacramento Advocacy Day. So the Central Coast Coalition, for those who are not familiar, is comprised of regional transportation agencies and or designated metropolitan planning organizations within the Caltrans District 5 region. So that's comprised of Santa Barbara County in the south, all the way north to Santa Cruz and San Benito. Margie Kern serves as chair of the coalition, and it was formed in 2010 to raise awareness of the US 101 on the Central Coast as a major economic asset to the state and nation, and to encourage investment in the corridor. Similar to the federal platform, attached to your staff report is the proposed draft 2022 state and legislative platform in 2 formats. So we have the red line version and the clean copy. This platform identifies 6 issue areas as priority topics, each containing goals and strategies as well. Those issue areas are acquiring state federal funding for our priority projects, leveraging regional partnerships, enhancing transit service, expanding passenger rail, addressing mobility and meeting state climate change mandates, and modernizing the Ralph M. Brown Act. The draft 2022 state platform aims to be responsive to the dynamics of implementing the federal bipartisan infrastructure law here in California. Chair Williams, it's all about how that money's going to look like, what that money is going to look like for us here. Opportunities to influence competitive funding programs, and to seek opportunities to modify and allow for the flexibility to conduct public meetings remotely. So like the federal platform as a priority issue for SBCAG, we have added a regional partnership on the topic of broadband to this year's platform. The platform was reviewed by our TTAC committee and they have requested additional language to support enhancement of roadway safety and prevention of fatalities for drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Additionally, the committee acknowledged that as the state adopts new policies for multimodal facilities, member agencies are interested in opportunities to influence funding programs and public policy related to building, operating, and maintaining these systems. So these requested additional items were added to the 2022 platform. So before we take any questions, I would like to invite and welcome Gus Corey of Corey Consulting to present on our report of our 2021 activities and what's ahead. Big stuff happening in 2022 as all eyes are on the state budget as we approach the governor's May revise. We will also be asking you to authorize a single delegate to participate in the Central Coast Coalition Legislative Advocacy Day. There are 2 dates that we are looking for that, Friday, March 11th or Wednesday, March 30th, and that will be conducted virtually. With that, Gus, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Good morning, Chair Williams and Directors. Gus Corey, Legislative Advocate, and truly wish that I could be there in person as well, but had to stay back home due to a family obligation. I look to seeing many of you in the near future, however. So just a couple of tidbits just to give some context. The platform is strikingly similar to last year. It was updated, however, to provide some detail on some of the opportunities that we have for this year. Going back to 2021, the legislature was unable to come to an agreement on the transportation funding package. That agreement was predicated upon the legislature agreeing to exhaust the remaining appropriation authority, the $4.2 billion for the High-Speed Rail Bond Act. In exchange, Governor Newsom was making some general fund resources available for the first time since 2009, focused on investments into rail, transit, grade separations, funding for climate resiliency to address some of the impacts that we've experienced along the 101 back in 2017 with the Thomas Fire and the mudslides. And so, but because an agreement was not struck, that conversation has rolled over into 2022. SBCAG worked very diligently under Director Kern's leadership and with collaboration with SBCAG staff. We had come up with the proposal last year to say that there's about $1.1 billion worth of interest funds that are out there that belong to transportation. We were looking for using that resource as a way to try to fund and complete the 101 corridor. Thankfully, the governor at least vetoed legislation which would have dedicated those resources solely towards the SHOP program, which is for highway maintenance. And in his veto message, he specifically stated that those funds would be used in consideration of a transportation package deal. So half the goal was accomplished. Now we need to see if we can get members of the legislature to agree on that proposal. We did get substantial support. We had our entire Central Coast delegation, members from the San Joaquin Valley, San Bernardino County, some members from the Bay Area that saw the utility of dispersing those funds to fund active transportation projects. Our county would have gotten about $80 million for that program. But going forward, that was to address a Cycle 5 backlog for the active transportation program. We're now well into the Cycle 6 program, and so folks are probably going to have to reapply. Governor Newsom is recommending $500 million be augmented to the active transportation program. There is a much larger appetite by the legislature to go north of that number. So in the governor's 2020, 22-23 state budget, what's changed from last year is the overwhelming amount of surplus funds that we've been experiencing. And just to kind of give you, there's $45.7 billion available this year after our obligations for education under Proposition 98 and fulfilling the rainy day fund under Proposition 2. There's going to be about $20 billion for the legislature to divvy up for basically whatever they want. We are at what's called the GAN limit, which is our state's version of the appropriations limit. We're about $2.5 billion over that. And so we've either got to return that money back to taxpayers, or the legislature and the governor have to make some kind of change to the Constitution and bring that before voters to get that authorization. But we had a $53 billion deficit in fiscal year 2021, a $76 billion deficit, surplus last year, and now a $45.7 billion surplus. And that doesn't even account what may be projected in the May revise, which it's a real rough number. There's nothing official, but I've been told that it could be as high as an additional $17 billion that comes into state coffers. And as Mr. Gilchrist mentioned, we didn't have the luxury of having federal funding last year. And so the state is expected to receive $25 billion over the course of the next 5 years just for federal aid highways, and about $9 billion for public transportation expenditures. And so that's a real long-winded way of saying that there are generational opportunities to try to complete the corridor and maximize investments into multimodal options for our constituency and for our region. And so we're going to keep working with our delegation. Senator Monique Limon was really a leader in the effort last year to try to work out on a budget solution. We'll be coordinating with her as well as other delegation members. And so the legislature must submit a balanced budget to the governor by June 15th. So we should know what winds up happening with the state resources before we apply for the Senate Bill 1 Cycle 3 programs, which applications are due later this fall. That effort is becoming a little bit more complicated only because the Newsom administration is really underscoring the need to try to promote investments into multimodal options and wean our dependence on the automobile, especially single occupant combustion engine powered vehicles. And so we're doing everything that we can, just like we've been for several years, with trying to advocate for our lane and the train strategy. We're working very closely with the Department of Transportation on investments for zero emission vehicle infrastructure. The governor actually is putting an additional $3.9 billion this year for a total of $10 billion over the next 6 years for zero emission vehicle infrastructure and incentives for ZEV purchases. And so there's quite a bit of opportunity this year that we hope to be able to take advantage of and capitalize on. So I'll stop right there, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or directors may have. Thank you so much.
Questions from the board?
I think I have the same questions that our chair asked of the federal lobbyists, and what I'm trying to wrap my head around what we have available that's already carried over from the last couple of years in that cycle, and then are all of the grants that might be coming through SB 1 going to own, or are those funds only going to be available as a grant competitively, or something that will be trickled down to us based on population, or however they want to decide that.
So I'll take the last question first. So the Senate Bill 1 programs are fairly set. The pie's been established. There's about 4 different competitive programs that we apply for. One is the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. That's where we got our Cycle 1 award from. There's another one, it's the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, the Active Transportation Program, and then the Local Partnership Program, which we receive a formulaic share of because we're a self-help county, but then there's also a competitive program component. And given what our needs in order to complete the corridor, we need to apply for multiple programs in order to try to complete the funding equation. And so the programs are the same that they were in cycle 2. With respect to the state budget, there is an appetite by legislators, and especially the Assembly Budget Committee Chair is proposing to take about $10 billion and earmark some funding for specific projects and programs. We haven't really seen anything out of the Senate quite yet. And Governor Newsom's preference has been to augment existing competitive programs, but mainly on the rail side. But not so much for what's become the traditional Senate Bill 1 programs that we've been pursuing.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Chair Williams, I see no one on Zoom requesting to speak, and none of the attendees.
Any public comment?
Any public comment either? No public comment.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Osborne moves to accept items A through C.
Chair, before you go on, you need to appoint a delegate to the thing.
So we're looking at March 11th or March 30th for the Virtual Advocacy Day. The request of the Central Coalition is that it's just one, because one delegate per agency. However, you can, if there's additional opportunities throughout 2022, we can designate an alternate as well.
And please eliminate if there is any, and Gus, feel free to chime in, is there more of a need to have a North County or a South County, depending on which of our legislators are more persuadable on the issue? So do you have any input on that sense?
Mr. Chair, I think I've just always very much appreciated the enthusiasm that the board has had for participating. I think we have several veterans that have been up, Member Sierra, Member Hart, yourself. So whomever wants to participate, I think would provide great value and perspective. It's a little quirky in Sacramento now. I was hoping that we would be able to do something in person, but with the renovation of the state capitol and the movement by the legislators into a flex space across the street, it's not really conducive for in-person meetings. And then the county of Sacramento has also had an ordinance to dissuade public gatherings. They haven't lifted that ordinance either. And so with timing being of the essence and making sure that we get something calendared, that's why we're recommending a virtual meeting. We've typically had at least the chair and maybe some other representative, but I'll clearly defer to whoever's available. And I would love to have any one of you participate.
Chair Williams, Director Sierra would like to speak.
Director Sierra.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed participating, and I would be more than willing to continue unless there's somebody else who wants to participate. It really is fun with all the other areas, all of District 5 working together. It's a unique experience.
Well, why don't we under C appoint former Chair Sierra and with myself as a backup, so that if she can't make one of the meetings, that you'll have me do it.
I will amend my motion with that suggestion.
Great.
Second.
A motion by Osborne, a second by Rouse. Please call the roll.
Director Hart, Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson, Levanino,
Aye.
Eurig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Sierra,
Aye.
Osborne, Patino,
Aye.
Parodi,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Williams.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0. And move on to item 8. Item 8 is the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Program. Receive presentation on the financial incentives available to transit agencies under the California Low Carbon Fuel Standard Program.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to just provide a brief introduction to this item as a follow-up to the very successful bus event that we had, battery electric bus event that we had in Buellton. Thank you to board members that attended. It was a great event. As the board is well aware, SBCAG is a transit agency just along with Santa Maria and Lompoc and Solvang. And as such, we're subject to what I would call medium-term electrification requirements at the state level. So beginning in about 3 years, part of our future bus procurements are going to have to be zero emissions, specifically battery electric in our case. And then after 2030, we're not going to be able to buy, no transit agencies in the state are going to be able to purchase any gas or diesel vehicles. And so as a incentive program, the state is pushing or providing incentives to transit agencies to electrify their fleets and use electricity as a transportation fuel compared to what is mostly diesel, a little bit of gasoline, but primarily diesel in the transit space. And so we're going to talk about a couple things today, what that means for us. We're going to use an example, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the effects on us of that incentive program, which is called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Credit Program. So I'd like to turn it over to Whitney Rush to go through this, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Scott. Good morning, Chair Williams, fellow directors. My name is Whitney Rush. I'm a project manager in the Rail and Transit Division. And as Scott mentioned, we're here today to talk about additional financial incentives to charging our zero-emission, all-electric bus. We'll look at one of our real-life routes, highlight the cost savings of using electricity over diesel, but also highlight the California program that will actually pay us to charge our bus. So let's get started. We'll use our most popular route, Lompoc to Goleta. Call it around 110 miles round trip. Currently, our diesel buses use approximately 22 gallons to make this round trip. We are all feeling the pinch of fuel costs these days, and our buses are no exception. In January 2022, we were paying around $4.71 per gallon. So in fuel charges alone, this route was costing us over $103 just to operate. This route runs 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. You can see how the price of fuel is really going to add up. So now instead, let's look at our electric bus. Same route, Lompoc to Goleta, same 110 miles. Instead of using 22 gallons of diesel, we're going to use 220 kilowatt hours. Right now, we're charging this bus at our facility in Goleta, and in January 2022, we were paying around 12.1 cents per kilowatt hour. This totals our fuel charges for the electric bus to $26.62 per round trip. This is already a huge amount of savings, 34% cheaper, $77 worth of savings. With those savings, we could run 3 additional legs of this trip. So we're saving money. This is great, but it gets even better. California has the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Program. It's a regulation administered by CARB, the California Air Resource Board. LCFS aims to reduce emissions in the transportation sector by limiting carbon intensity of fuels used. So fuels like petroleum, diesel are very high carbon intensity fuels. Fuels like compressed natural gas, hydrogen, and electricity are low carbon intensity fuels. Within this market, low carbon intensity fuel producers, such as ourselves, can register to create LCFS credits based on the amount of fuel dispensed. Meanwhile, high carbon intensity fuel producers purchase those credits to help offset the amount of high carbon intensity fuels dispensed within their portfolio. This dynamic of overproducers and over-reducers enables a market for for emission transactions. Each LCFS credit is equivalent to 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide reduced. And the price of these credits fluctuates based on supply and demand, just like any market. Recently, these credits have been as high as 32 cents per kilowatt hour, and right now they've settled around 24 cents per kilowatt hour. So what does this program mean for our electric bus? So that same bus, same route, it's using those 220 kilowatt hours to operate. But the state, through the LCFS credits, is going to give us 24 cents per kilowatt hour. So upon charging this bus, we will receive $52 from the state. So let's compare this to our diesel bus and what it looks like. So diesel bus, it's using those 22 gallons of diesel, $103, it's a sunk cost, we can all understand that. Our electric bus, on the other hand, is going to cost us $26 to charge it, but the state through LCFS is going to give us $52. This gives us a net revenue of $25 to charge our bus. That's huge. Imagine going to the pump, fueling your car with your fuel of choice, and walking away with cash in your pocket. It's an amazing program that is really incentivizing the use of lower carbon intensity fuels. And this is just one bus. Let's go ahead and see what that would look like if we applied it to our entire fleet. So right now, with this program, we'd be saving about $129 per trip in money that we are not spending on diesel, plus charging and monetizing our LCFS credits. The Clean Air Express operates over 2,200 trips per year, giving us a savings of nearly $300,000. And this would be using our 9 trips that we currently operate. Prior to COVID, we ran 13 round trips, so there's additional cost savings there. Plus, this is just looking at a Lompoc trip. There's even more cost savings once we start factoring in a Santa Maria trip. So this is a really exciting program that we're happy to be part of. We're excited that California offers it, and we're really pleased to present it to you today. And it's our way of getting paid to actually charge our electric bus. And with that, I'll pass it back to Scott, and then we're here for any questions.
Thank you, Whitney. I just wanted to close up with this. Again, this is a good news story. We like presenting these, and I worked with Whitney to try to impart some of my approach to presentations, which is short and sweet and visual, so hopefully that had some effect on you today. But I do want to point out that there was one thing that we didn't talk about on this presentation, and that was the environmental benefits of electrification. So one thing that we're doing, as we all learned at that bus event, is we're charging our bus through a partnership with 3CE with 100% renewable electricity. So we're going from, on that one particular bus and future buses in the future, is from diesel, very high carbon intensity, to a tremendous amount of environmental benefit from using 100% renewable electricity. So again, we presented a cost basis to you today, very good value equation. And I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director Hartman?
I just wondered how long the LCFS program is expected to continue, and what are our plans for our next electric bus?
Taking the first question first, the estimate right now, based on the state goals, is that the LCFS program will continue to 2030. There's some question about whether or not it would be extended after that. It probably depends on the marketplace and the adoption rate and things like that. And with respect to when we might think about procuring our next electric coach, we are required by the state as a transit agency to bring an electrification plan to our board, to you, and we're planning on doing that in the first half of 2023 next year. And that will have sort of a layout. As the board is well aware, we're very challenged for any sort of capital funding availability to purchase these buses. Having said that, we're going to outline what that path forward is going to be in that plan early next year.
My question is, if you had a source for up to $250,000 additionally per vehicle, would that mean that you would bring more requests to us this year
Bring specifically what to the board?
for additional electric coaches?
Well, first of all, the annual savings is system-wide, so that would be a projection just based on fuel use. The delta between a diesel bus and an electric bus is, or coach in our case, is on the range of $200,000 to $300,000, probably $250,000. But we're in the process right now of transferring a number of diesel buses from Antelope Valley Transit Agency to SBCAG. That's going to renew our fleet for probably the next, 4 to 6 years, something like that. We are certainly interested in electrifying our fleet to the extent that we can. We're a very early adopter on the bleeding edge with respect to what we've done. As the board is well aware, only 3 agencies in the state, and the other 2 are far larger than we are. So we're really excited about that. We, if we have some available funding, we would be able to accommodate that, but currently we don't. So if there's, if a couple of $100,000 drops from the sky, like it did with this partnership with the state, we would certainly look forward to doing exactly what we've done.
Well, I would like to make $250,000 drop from the sky. I mean, especially if it changes our course rapidly. I mean, from a GHG reduction perspective, this is a really good investment from a reducing ongoing costs. This is a really good incentive. And what 3CE is offering member agencies, which includes many of our local governments. And so I guess the difficulty would be technically SBCAG isn't a member agency, but almost all of SBCAG's member agencies is a member agency of 3CE, is up to $250,000 for the delta between a gas-powered vehicle and a electric-powered vehicle. And that's for heavy duty, and this is heavy duty. So I think we should pursue that option if the delta is truly, magically the same amount as their max out of the grant amount. I think that's really important. And just so that people don't confuse it, because with light duty, and this is something you should tell your public works departments, the light duty incentive at 3C is $5,000 up to $5,000 per vehicle. So that's for like Ford F-150s or something else, light duty trucks for your fleets.
Chair Williams, before you go on to anybody else.
Yeah.
Director Lavanino has his hand raised for
a while.
Yeah.
Director Lavanino.
Chair Lavanino or Director Lavanino?
Director Lavanino, we should have taken a recording for this for one of your next stand-ups, but we can only hear every other second of what you're saying. So if you could either call in.
Okay, is this any better or not?
It is.
Okay, well, I was down in a dip, so I'm on the beautiful.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
It's no longer working.
Well, you know what? I'll go up. I'll off. I'll get my.
Director Lavanino, I just as a suggestion to just hang up your Zoom and do the one-touch option might provide a better way for us to communicate. If you are on Zoom right now, coming back in on the phone might work.
If I could just respond quickly to your comment about the heavy-duty vehicle incentive through 3CE, that's a mouthful. We are in discussions with them, and I know they're developing their program. There could be if SBCAG, we're not a member agency because we're not a jurisdiction. However, I know they're looking at similar agencies like SBCAG as being treated as if they were a member agency. That would make them available, or make the incentives available at that same level. But if that doesn't come to fruition, one option could be to partner with a member agency and have them take advantage of that and then lease the bus for $1. Something creative like that might be an option.
I feel like this is one we shouldn't take no for an answer to, considering how many of us are member agencies and considering really how it is really a goal of 3C to get this out to folks who are to vehicles that are going to use it often enough to really make the incentive worth it from a GHG perspective. And from the looks of your presentation, I would say it would be an excellent candidate. Director Rouse.
Yeah, a quick question. I realize we're looking at a snapshot in time. What is the anticipated life of one of these vehicles, and how do we anticipate replacing or redoing the cells as they do expire?
With respect to the average or the expected life expectancy of an over-the-road coach, a diesel coach, it depends on how often you use it. Typically, in the industry standard, you talk about a 1 million mile coach, but that depends on how often you might do it. In our case, we're currently operating buses that are almost 20 years old. We have relatively low miles in our service. With battery electric buses, there's so many fewer moving parts. The expectation is that electric vehicles last longer. Maintenance is dramatically reduced, as anyone that drives an electric car would be aware. So the expectation for this electric bus, and there aren't any, we don't have a 20-year history of an electric coach, but the expectation is that it would last significantly longer than an existing diesel coach, just because all of the part replacement, all of that mechanical stuff is just not present. And so the question is, with respect to the batteries, replacing the batteries can be replaced. There is a warranty that comes with over-the-road coaches. In our case, it is 70% at 12 years. And so, that's going to be, we'll see how that works out, a decade from now. But the question is always sort of what you end up with a vehicle is, do you replace the engine or do you just buy a new vehicle? And in the case of the batteries, it's going to depend on the condition of the coach and the price of the batteries at the time. There's an expectation that battery prices are going to decline over time.
Thank you.
Director Hartman.
I just wondered if you had the cost estimate for the lower maintenance costs on the bus. And that's question number one. And could you remind me when you're coming back? And could you come back with an aggressive idea about how we could convert to electric buses more quickly if 3CE were involved?
Just with respect to the first question, and I know that was a question or an issue that you were interested in, I did look into that. And especially with the over-the-road coach, which has a little bit of a different maintenance schedule than a local urban bus that goes 5 or 10 miles instead of 70 or 80 miles. There isn't a good track record of what the lower maintenance cost benefit is for electric vehicles. There's conventional wisdom and the experience is that it is significantly less expensive. Just how much is unknown at this point. With respect to an aggressive fleet replacement plan, we can certainly talk with SCE, and part of that is going to depend on what you heard earlier today, the state and federal funding programs that are out there. SBCAG is not currently a direct transit funding recipient. We're hoping that will change in the future. We're treating ourselves for the past several years as if we are a federal recipient. So with some of the legislative changes, we may be able to be a direct recipient and then take advantage of some of those federal funding programs. But if some funding were to become manifest, that would be one of the first places that we'd want to look, is to be able to accelerate that and be ahead of the curve.
I see Mr. Gilchrist taking notes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Is there any, Sarkis?
Yes, so Chair and Directors, there's also going to be hundreds of millions of dollars through the state budget they're expecting this year. And so we will be working with our transit partners including all transit partners in the county. What we'd like to do ideally is potentially do one big application for the region to show the different partnerships and the different needs, and then to help reduce the administration for everybody to do that. And then that way we can submit one mega application.
That sounds eminently reasonable.
And Chair Williams, Director Lavanino's back. I don't know if he wants to speak again.
Yes, Director Lavanino.
Well, as luck would have it, Commissioner Rouse asked exactly the same two questions I wanted answered, so thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Director Lavanino. Director Urick.
And Scott, you answered the question about the maintenance, but I think one thing Sarkis would be to, in addition to transportation needs for transportation buses, like I know for San Ynez Valley Transit, we would love to have that going from, Solvang throughout the entire valley, but, we also have Colt, those little ones, but each of us as a city, I know Buellton and ourselves, we also have the same bus that we use for our recreation departments. So pretty much a lot of the cities utilize that same small type of bus for recreation. And that would be additional buses that would be nice to take those nice long trips to Dodger Stadium, for the Super Bowl that we always want to go to. But adding that factor in, not just the transportation part of it, but the recreation element as well.
Yes, so through the chair, what we can do is definitely just reach out to not just the transit partners, but each of the local jurisdictions as well, and then see what we can include in that application.
Okay. I think we're ready for a receive and file. Or do we not even need action on that? Okay, then let's go to item 9, 1-minute reports. I'm not seeing any lights. Director Rass?
All right, thank you, Chair Williams. Our Public Works Department and the Creeks Division for the City of Santa Barbara are hosting a joint celebration of Phase 2 of the Arroyo Burro Open Space Restoration and the Las Positas and Modoc Roads Multi-Use Plan. So the ribbon cutting will take place on Thursday, March 3rd at 8:30 in the morning, where the multi-use path meets the new footbridge from Las Positas Road onto the Arroyo Burro Open Space. The Las Positas and Modoc Roads Multi-Use Plan is a 2.6-mile-long path providing a safe route for bicyclists, runners, and walking along the region's coastal route that connects Goleta to Ventura. And the city will send along an electronic invitation next week to the SBCAG and the board.
I'll just give a 1-minute report repeating the 3C transportation incentives for the agencies that can take advantage of this, and take the opportunity to thank Mayor Patino for being dedicated in lasting the entirety of a nearly 4-hour meeting of 3C yesterday, and the new director from Solvang as well. So the incentive for sedans is $2,500 per vehicle. The incentive for light duty is $5,000. So that would be like the F-150 Lightning, which would be a significant incentive at a vehicle that's starting at $43,000. I think it's important for any agencies interested in that to decide now, because you'd need to get on the waiting list, right, to get those F-150s, and obviously more agencies that do it, the more they're going to crank up production. My understanding is Chevrolet will put out a Silverado electric to compete with Ford's. So that's also encouraging. That's supposed to come out next year too. And the F-150 is supposed to come out later on this year. And for heavy duty, the idea is to cover the delta between the fuel vehicle and the electric vehicle up to $250,000 for member agencies. So, my experience is with, some of your staff, they have a lot of things going, so you pushing it with your general services or with your public works staff could really make a difference in taking advantage of these programs as early as possible. Any other 1-minute reports?
I had one.
Director
Just out of,
Gere.
thank you, Chair. Just out of Solvang, we're still working on our general plan updates. Some of the elements hadn't been updated since we actually became a city in '85, so we're looking forward to trying to get everything, and we're doing it all inclusive, including the housing and transportation, recreation elements. Really wanted to thank SBCAG staff for working with our consultant and providing the statistics and the numbers that we needed for some of the studies that you guys have provided for the SBCAG that we're kind of utilizing for some of our numbers. And also want to thank you guys as your staff for recognizing our recently retired Public Works Director, Matt Vanderlyn. And just wanted to give a shout out to Matt and thank him for all the work that he did for Solvang and working on TTAC and some of those other committees. And thank you for that. And then just lastly, on a personal note, at our meeting, council meeting that we just had on Monday, announced my pending retirement from the sheriff's office effective March 31. So I will be retired, coming back. Extra help though, I've already been approved for that, but they'll give me more time to focus on some of the issues that we have going forward as the mayor. So that's it.
Director Hartman?
I serve on the Adult and Aging Network, and we are engaged in developing a master plan on aging consistent with the state program and focusing very much initially on housing. And so we're asking the county and the various jurisdictions to look at their housing element with an eye to how we will be accommodating our aging population. And we're developing a framework foundational piece that we will provide to everybody that ideally will have information about the aging population in each community so that that will be helpful in these housing elements.
And I wanted to make sure that I explained that the new director at 3CE from Solvang is Director Arona, and she also hung in for the entirety of a much longer than expected meeting, trial by fire, yesterday. Can we go to the executive director's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, members of the board. I want to introduce our newest SBCAG team member. Maya Kulkarni is here in person to be introduced. Maya most recently worked for Mark Thomas and Associates, which we work with on our 101 project. She's also a recent graduate of UC San Diego, my alma mater. And she's also finishing up her master's degree at UC Irvine. So we're really pleased to have Maya as part of our team and look forward to many years of productive relationships there. Earlier this month, I had the privilege of presenting SBCAG's Regional Transportation Improvement Program to the California Transportation Commission. We are proposing our almost $2 million of our share of the state gas tax funding, mostly to the Highway 101 project, and that was well received by the commissioners. Our broadband consortium of the Pacific Coast and SBCAG are working hard and making progress on our broadband strategic plan, which you had approved us to move forward on. We're currently working on collecting data, developing a survey, and we'll be asking all of you to help distribute that survey, and also identifying members to participate in a stakeholder group. So to find the latest information, we've developed a website hosted on sbcag.org/broadband. And it is with a heavy heart, and this is sad news, Scott Spalding has also announced his retirement at the end of March. He has been our only transit director that SBCAG has had. He's overseen the management and operations of the Clean Air Express since we took it over from the Air Pollution Control District. He has managed the fleet replacement and significant service expansion, our competitive contracts process, the requests for proposals on that, the design and build of the Clean Air Express website, the standardization of routes. I could go on and on and on about all the work he's done for the Clean Air Express. But I think another major accomplishment was the regional transit facility that we recently purchased that finally gave a home to Clean Air Express, and I'm sure that's a proud mark in his career. He's also been working with Ventura County and starting the Coastal Express service that we started in 2001 and significantly expanded the service between 2003 and 2006, and worked with Ventura to focus the service on the peak hour market through our schedule changes and route customization. He's also was instrumental in getting our train and our lane in the train strategy implemented a few years back, and working with the low sand corridor to retime the schedule to accommodate our commuters coming from Ventura County. And he was also instrumental in forming the low sand board because he was involved in that transition when it was transferred from Caltrans to the low sand agency. So he was at the very beginning of that. And with that, I want to say I'm really sad, but we will be working on replacing Scott in the near future, and I'll give you updates as we go there. But yeah, so thank you for that.
Director Hart.
Is this our last chance to?
Yes, he will be taking a long vacation at the starting of March, so this will be his last board meeting. So thank you.
Oh my gracious, you have become an institution on all of these things. I don't know how we're going to manage without you. I hope you'll be available for consulting, but in addition to all you've done, you've been such a fine teacher. We're going to miss you terribly.
It made it a little bit easier to promise to come back at some point in the future.
Do we have any other directors' questions or comments? I just want to say, Scott, that you've been tremendously helpful to me in understanding what our operations are in the partnership and negotiations that come from partnership with VCTC and with the wrestling over a maintenance yard and all that sort of stuff. Really appreciate your work, and if it's legal, we should put a plaque on one of our next electric buses that we get with Scott's name on it.
Yep, we could have a naming ceremony. Thank you, Scott, for all you've done for Solvang and working with Matt and all those other committee members that have had prior. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to the Caltrans report.
Thank you, Chair Williams and directors. Tim Gubbins, Caltrans District Director here on the Central Coast. Nice to be here in person. A couple quick updates today. District 5 has finished our active transportation plan for the Central Coast. We had worked with this agency and a lot of other agencies and your individual ones, as well as do extensive outreach. All 12 districts of the state will have it, but we happen to be the first ones to complete that. And we will be presenting the completed plan at upcoming Central Coast Coalition, as well as technical advisories and all that. And the goals are safety, equity, mobility, preservation, the corridor context partnership, and showing where we do have those gaps so that as we do projects, we can incorporate that as well as look for other opportunities. On the Clean California front, Governor Newsom has announced just in the last week $312 million for new Clean California projects to beautify and revitalize public spaces. And these are on the state system that he has announced first. I'm happy to say within District 5, we will have 12 projects moving forward. And here in Santa Barbara County, we will have 3. First in Santa Maria, the historic Main Street highway beautification. So highways 135 and 166, basically between Main Street and Cook and Cook Street, upgrading intersections, bringing in artistic elements, and putting in some more creative signage and landmark things. Also, the New Cuyama-Carrizo Plain National Monument Highway, we're working to get some community identifiers out there on Route 166. I do have fact sheets for each of these and can talk more. And lastly, the Chumash Highway beautification in where the new Chumash Education Center is going. Landscaping, California native plants, and again, directional signage and other artistic elements. There has been a call for projects on the local side, and I know a lot of your agencies have done that. Those were just submitted and are being reviewed. They were submitted last week or the week before, I believe. So I'm looking forward to hearing on those very soon. And last item I wanted to bring up was Governor Gavin Newsom has announced the appointment of our current Caltrans director, Toks Amashakin. He will now be serving as the secretary for the California State Transportation Agency. Secretary David Kim had stepped down for personal reasons, and so Director Amashakin will step up to become secretary. As he transitions in the next few weeks, we will hear more about probably an interim Caltrans director and then a permanent one. With that, there is a project information packet in your agenda, and I would be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Director Gubbins? I just want to ask you on some. This is usually our forum to grill you on local issues to us. Obviously, there's a lot of angst about the construction corridor right now. I will first say there's not a whole lot that you can engineer to make it's safe to drive 80 miles an hour through a construction corridor. So I think the large blame lies on individuals that are choosing to drive crazy in a 55 mile per hour zone. But I'm interested whether you guys are considering, larger signage, even letting people know how many accidents are happening a week, so that people, first thing they see coming into the corridor is, you could be the statistic for this week, or other communication strategies or engineering solutions. Definitely our constituents are worried.
Yeah, we appreciate those concerns as again, for our construction workers and the contractors, that is their daily office. They're out there every day. And so they also share their concerns because they don't always have the protection of vehicles around them. But I do not know of any larger signage or plans. We learn a little bit each stage and try and incorporate in that stage and in future ones. I will work with our team to look into public education or public announcements. As I think you all know, and we'll be hearing more soon in the workshop, we are very fortunate to have such a collaborative partnership team there. The cities, the county, Caltrans, SBCAG are working together to get information out, to get the best corridor we have. So that includes not just the planning and funding, but also the operating during construction. So I will take that back and challenge the team to see what we can do to just improve that even more.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Govins? Then item 12 is committee meetings reports. Yep, Director Hart by
Director
Zoom.
Hart's not here, but Director Julian is here.
Director Julian, can you give us Calvan's report?
Yeah, I was unable to attend that meeting. I participated in Santa Barbara County Parks Master Plan. So at our next meeting, I'll give you an update on what happened back then and in the future meetings with Calvin's.
Well, with our other county hats, we're appreciative of you being in the master plan. That obviously is important for all of our futures. And there is no communications report. So I will then adjourn the meeting.
And before we go, please everyone remember there's a separate Zoom link for the Highway 101 workshop you should have received this morning as well.
So we will adjourn, the next board meeting will be on Thursday, March 17th, beginning at 10 a.m. We are holding the workshop subsequent to this meeting.